Well, welcome to this edition of our Women in Coaches webinar series. As you can see on screen, we're joined this week by Lisa Cellucci, head coach of University of Iowa. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're right in the thick of season right now, and we were just chatting there. You had some great results just over the last weekend. You've got some tough games coming up. Congratulations so far. Remind me, how long have you been at Iowa in your current role?
Yeah, I've currently been the head coach for 9 years, but I've been coaching here at Iowa for the last 22, so a long time. And I played here. So
Yeah, and tons of success in recent years, and things are going well and continue to go this season. So you must be pleased with the way you are right now.
really are. We've had a lot of great momentum, especially the last 5 years, and we're just trying to build on that and finish strong this season.
Lisa, if you could just briefly describe your coaching philosophy for us.
Sure. Yeah. I've always seen sport as a way for young women to learn about themselves, and I know that's what my sport experience did for me. I learned so much about myself through all my sporting moments, and I remember being told when I was entering college by Dr. Christine Grant, who was literally one of the most impressive women I've ever known, that if you can love sport and survive what sport throws at you, you can pretty much survive anything. So, my coaching philosophy, Craig, is really centered around that. I truly believe a sport experience can empower a woman, and that coaching starts and finishes with preparing the athletes as thoroughly as possible for all of the challenges of competition and really for all that life will throw at them after graduation. Those real, like, kind of meaningful achievements that people try to go after in life and that are never easy, like whatever it may be, from trying to secure the dream job or raise a family or earn a certain degree or win a championship. I think all of those things are really hard at times. So you have to be able to handle the hard and work through adversity and persevere. So for me, it's really important to really build meaningful relationships with the athletes, develop trust, open communication. So when things do get hard, they kind of understand the why behind everything we do and what we're trying to help them prepare for. So I guess I would say really building accountability, fostering effective communication, developing relationships, and like really being very consistent with a process oriented approach are really kind of the cornerstones to my coaching philosophy.
Yeah, I think that's a really great message there. That sort of process part of this journey that we're all on is critical. And I think, as you said, that really helps the players understand and the athletes understand that, okay, this is part of a bigger thing. And today may have not gone so well, but we're always mindful of a bigger picture. So it's a really helpful reminder
Definitely.
for coaches there. Now, in terms of influences, who's been big influences for you in your coaching
Yeah.
career?
I've had so many wonderful coaches and mentors throughout my playing and coaching career who've really influenced me, and I feel really lucky in that regard. So I could share a lot of different things, but I would have to say, hands down, the person who's had the biggest influence on my coaching would be Tracy Grisbaum. She was my assistant coach when I was in college at Iowa, and then I had the great privilege to work alongside her for 14 years as her assistant. And so, when I started coaching, I had so much learning to do, and I really feel like I was lucky to be led by one of the best in the business. And Tracy, I think, was and still is regarded as one of the best technical and tactical coaches in the country. She was super creative, very forward thinking, and a great problem solver. So I learned those pieces from her. But what I think always amazed me, and what I know made her such a successful leader, was her consistency. She was very consistent in her preparation, always prepared with every detail taken care of, and took her practice and game preparation like very seriously, and consistent in her communication, purposeful with how she communicated, very intentional about what she said, and then very consistent in her emotion and demeanor. And she never got too high or too low in practices and games. And I think that was always very calming to the team and staff. And you're in these high performance situations, and there are so many intense moments. So I think that was really impressive. But really, really every day she modeled how she wanted her team to play, act, and carry themselves. And I think that was impressive and something I try to emulate every day, although the crazy competitor comes out in me a lot. So, but overall, just a model of professionalism, preparedness, and poise. And, when I think about really credible leaders and really effective leaders, I think they really drive their behaviors by their words and their actions and continually look to move the needle. And that was Tracy Grisbaum every day. And I still continue to take a lot away from her. And I do have to say, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my current coaching staff too, Michael Bull and Jess Barnett. They influence me every day, and we really complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. And Michael and I have worked together for 9 seasons now, and tactically how he sees the game is outstanding, along with being really technically savvy. And he truly helps, really advance our group and our principles of play. And Jess is a stickler with fundamentals and keeps it simple and keeps us grounded when Michael and I need it, which is really, really important. So
Yeah, no, it's great and fantastic. Thank you for sharing that about Tracy. I think we obviously know Tracy and known her for a while, but I hope she listens to this because it's nice.
I hope so too.
Nice to hear that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and I've sort of been keeping an eye on the program that you've been running for a few years now, and you have one of the things that you've done that I can see from it's certainly outside looking in, is you put together a good staff there, and it looks like you said you complement each other, and
sure.
that's a really, really important part of a head coach's role, is putting the right people around you. So
Yeah,
look,
definitely.
you've done a nice job with that for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Now, you've just mentioned their values, and what I like to also is that values are one thing, but behaviours are really important, and that's really where we spend our time. But in terms of values, what are important to you as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, integrity, doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and just really staying true to what you believe in. Service is another for me. I mean, just having like a real willingness to help and give to others is very important. Pride, for sure, being proud of who you represent. There's been unbelievable coaches and athletes that have been a part of Iowa field hockey, and I'm really proud to be a product of this legacy and tradition. And I go to work to be a keeper of this great legacy, and try to make all the women that came before me proud. And it's really truly what drives me. I'm a really results oriented person, Craig. So I believe like you get results through preparation. Being highly organized, precision, and accuracy are very important to me. My staff hear me say it all the time that really even the smallest details matter. And lastly, I think communication, it's an essential piece to life, to coaching, to relationships. And I've really learned through the years, like through some very wise mentors, that the biggest mistake we make with communication is listening to reply rather than listening to understand. And I really try to listen to my staff and the athletes and understand where they're coming from, and then make decisions based off of that.
Yeah, that is a challenge. I'm even doing that now. I'm listening to reply rather than listening to listen. You're right. But in terms of that, give me an example of, you spoke there about real attention to detail, and the tiniest things can make a big difference. What might that look like in a day for you? What would something that your coaches or players hear from you that is, oh yeah, there she is again, there she goes. Give me an example of what it could look like or sound like.
Yeah, I mean, so many things. Even just from making sure from a goalkeeper. I was a goalkeeper, Craig, and for the goalkeepers, like your shirt needs to be tucked in, and you need to be very tidy when you get out there. Presence matters, and how you present yourself, right? I mean, that's obviously the very smallest detail, but to my staff, when we meet every day to plan practice, we're planning things down to the minute to just be prepared. Of course, we're ready to adjust, but just precision and accuracy, and yeah, the details that I think things people don't think that matter really do. It's those small things that really drive it.
Yeah, for sure. That actually might lead, I don't know where this will go, but that might lead us into a rule of thumb, But in terms of rule of thumb, what do you have? Is there anything that you sort of really live by and stand by?
Yeah, well, you're going to hear me say it again. I mean, I would say that there's three that really stand at the forefront for me. And, for first of all, it's details matter. And my team would say that that's probably the thing they hear from me the most. Just doing the small things consistently and right, really makes a big difference. And I think when we focus on those things, it bleeds into everything else we do, and it sets the standard. And, I think taking care of the details for us are at the crux of all we do in our program. And we know we outwork and prepare teams that don't dot their I's and cross their T's, So that's a big thing. Another piece for me is what we permit, we promote. So, culture isn't what you say you want, it's actually what you do. And if you want to be successful and have a championship culture, you have to set the expectations and then apply them to everyone pretty relentlessly. And I think that means, you're going to have to handle some uncomfortable conversations at times, but to me, it's so worth it in the end. And it's proven pretty successful because, if you're going to set a standard, then it's got to be the standard. And I probably, lastly, I don't know, I was thinking about this a lot. I mean, being able to handle success like you handle failure, so you can control what happens, but you can't often control how you can't always control what happens, but you can control how you handle it. And I think a lot of times when you lose a game, you often learn a lot more because you really try to examine what went wrong. But I think sometimes when you experience success, like you just can't dwell at the top, right? So you can absolutely celebrate the achievement, but then you have to get back to seeking ways to continue to separate yourself or your team.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, just sort of, I think we just chatting even before we got started this interview, some of the challenges that we have with managing expectations of teams where they have a perception of an opponent and it's
Yep.
here, and they have another perception which is somewhere else. And as coaches, we know that's a real minefield and just a trap waiting to be stepped in, right?
Exactly. And I think that's I didn't answer your question very well earlier, but my team, they know when we're preparing the same way, whether we're playing the number one team in the country or, the number 45, and that
Yeah,
detail matters too.
yeah. Now, I think, listen, there's one thing that's coming out in this, just in our conversation already. You are consistently consistent. That's certainly, and that would be something that, yeah, I can imagine comes across all the time in what you're doing. So that's, I always like to see that in coaches, or,
Good.
just there is a plan, there is a vision, there is a mission, and we're sticking to it. So it's good. All right. When we talk about players, what are some of the qualities that you look for in players? What catches your eye?
Yeah, I mean, be a good person and a good teammate first and foremost, for sure. I really look for solid communicators and players that are authentic to themselves. Um, on field, definitely speed, athleticism, and just relentless competitors. Those athletes that just compete in all situations, and have a competitive intensity about them, like in everything they do. They always know the score. I can't stand it, Craig, when people don't know the score of what they're doing, and will work hard to really figure out, like, how to get that outcome. um, More so in the last couple of years, I'm really looking for those players who are adaptable and flexible, or at least have just a willingness to be open to different roles, because contribution is obviously fluid, and it's not always possible within a team setting to play the exact position you want or have a certain role and that an athlete might think is best for them. So someone who's adaptable and flexible, I think, is a great asset. And then I think look for those players who are intrinsically motivated, who really want to develop their game and are willing to put in the work to do so. I think the ability to train on your own, develop a plan, and have the patience to work through it is kind of a lost art right now. So,
Yeah, no, that's a good message. Absolutely. That piece about intrinsic motivation, I don't think that's come up in any of these conversations yet. But so there's certainly a commonality in around what you've spoken about with a lot of other coaches that we've spoken to. Really less about the technical, tactical part of this. The
right,
first thing that people are talking to is about the characteristics and qualities in that respect.
sure.
And I think that intrinsic motivation is, particularly in the programs that you guys are running, where they're all almost pretty much, well, they are centralized programs. Every day you've got to come out and provide something somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You have to have some patience and a willingness to keep developing,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Now, what do you find the hardest thing to coach?
Um, resilience for sure. I mean, when athletes experience a setback or just really face adversity or experience like a form of failure, kind of teaching them to have patience, persistence, willingness to work through the situation. I think that's tough. I think also think communication is really hard to coach in this day and age with the athletes. I think there's a great fear of being judged or wrong, or being perceived as like too harsh or mean. And you'll see athletes holding back on the field and off the field with their communication. And as you know, Craig, like giving specific direction is essential when you're playing hockey. So you have to organize defensively, you have to ban the ball or give a command with urgency. And then when you're on a team, especially at the college level, like, you have standards and you have to be able to hold each other to those. So there's a lot of challenging conversations that have to happen at times. And I think, yes, they're uncomfortable, but they're so important to be had. So, I see it as, high performing teams have chemistry, and chemistry is built by communication. So we have to have the skill set, just like we practice receiving under pressure or elimination, you have to practice being an intentional communicator. So it's a challenge to do so. Our staff, we really try to continue to tackle it head on. We put it in practices and meetings. We try to work on it in a lot of different scenarios. And I like to think that I've gotten better at it. But it's a work in progress for sure. But
Yeah, it's a difficult marker to measure, but I think, like you say, you're doing the right things there for sure. Is that it's a daily effort. There is, that you're reflecting and referring to it daily, and I think, that's where you're going to see the ground. But it's difficult to put stamp mark on it and say we would like
Yes.
this, and now we're better, particularly on a communication. It's not impossible, but it's not always that
No,
easy either.
no, you're so right. And so we try to just talk about that too, that it is hard to
Yeah.
measure, but let's try to make progress in these ways,
Yeah, I've already, even before we ask this question, I've got a picture in my mind of an Iowa practice and what it might look like. But if I were to wander by the field there, what would some of the trademarks be? You've certainly mentioned some here already, but if I
Yeah.
was looking and watching a session, what might I see there?
Yeah, if you were to stop by practice in Grand Field, you'd see a team that definitely understands expectations the moment they step on the field. You'd see them following routines that are in place to help them focus on performance. I mentioned it earlier, but you'd see that there's purpose behind everything we do. Everything's been thought out. Nothing's left to chance. There is intention behind everything, and of course, we're always ready to add or delete, just depending on the energy, the pulse of the group, the execution. But we definitely have a reason why we would stay with what we're doing or why we would divert. I think you see a really connected group who's ready to attack the session and enjoys actually being there and with each other. You'd see a focus for the day that's written on the board that's centered around one of our principles of play, and we carry that through practice, and the team knows in their debriefs, like during exercises, that the conversation should be, or we want it to be, centered around the execution of that principle and how to accomplish it so we can be more efficient in our debriefs. Within the practice, especially now in the fall season, you'd see a real game focus. We want everything we do to be with the game in mind. Like, we look to really try to create practice problems, situations that look like the game and what they're going to face in the upcoming weekend. Practice moves at a really good pace, lots of intensity. Within it, there's time for positional team debrief, and that's primarily athlete led. So, we know they need to be equipped, kind of goes back to the communication thing, to solve the problem in the moment in the game. So of course, coaches are there, we're giving teaching points, but we really try to have the athletes start out leading a lot of the debriefs when we do break from exercises. And then I think probably lastly, you'd see us really valuing the ball and a high level of possession. We have a very skilled back 4 to 5 players who can distribute at a high level. And a trademark of Iowa field hockey for a long, long time, you'd also see back to front team defense that's pretty relentless.
Got it. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask a little bit of a follow-up there.
Sure.
In terms of how you use your staff, we just mentioned that you've got a good group of staff there together that complement each other. What might it look like? You as the head coach, what's your interaction versus Jess and Michael? How might that look?
Yeah, so depending on what we're doing at practice that day, a lot of times we'll start out pretty positionally, or even, I was a goalkeeper. I really love coaching goalkeepers, and it's something that I didn't want to give up, being a head coach. So, I have enough trust in Michael and Jess that if we do split in the beginning, so I can give some love to the goalkeepers, that they're working with the field players and starting off in some possession. So that would really start how it goes. And then once we go through exercises, we've talked at practice, pre-practice meeting, what we wanted to do, what the emphasis was, and who was going to lead each one. So we kind of make sure that they hear all of our voices. That's really important to me, because we really do have different strengths and weaknesses, and I need Michael and Jess in a lot of different moments to make sure we're communicating super effectively. So, it depends exercise to exercise, but throughout a practice, they will hear all of our voices. And then, we kind of gravitate when we break up positionally. Let's say we're doing an outletting situation or whatnot. A lot of the times, Jess and I would be with the defense and goalkeepers, Michael more so with the forwards and mids, and vice versa. So that's what it would look like.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. Really good. I think that's such an important part of, working as a staff, is that they, for your staff development as well, is that they have an opportunity to lead moments and then take a step back. So yeah, sounds like you're doing a great thing there. Really cool.
Yeah.
Now, I asked this to a lot of coaches, and it's always interesting to see where the response go. Your toughest opponent, who is your toughest opponent, and why?
So I have an unbelievable photographic memory, Craig. So I could tell you the score of every game I've ever played in or coached. So I could name those off pretty quick, but I thought about this a lot, and I would say in some ways our toughest opponent is usually ourselves. I know that sounds cliche, but where we are constantly
what everyone else has been saying.
I got a little bit more to it, so don't worry. We are constantly trying to figure out, how to maximize our potential and be the best we can each day and play to our Iowa standard. And and to really consistently stay as one of the top teams in the country. But, we do strive to have a really highly competitive schedule every year. So our game prep is really challenging each week. And so on any given day, it can be an opponent or it could be ourselves. But historically speaking, we've had unbelievable games against some consistent top competitors in the Big Ten and the ACC. And I've been at Iowa for a long time as an athlete and coach. And when I played in the late 90s, it was a very different 2 to 4 teams. That was our toughest opponent than it is now. And I love that for our sport, because I think we've really grown in terms of parity with so many great coaches and athletes, and kind of each game brings its own challenge. But I think what's so exciting is that for me is that right now I know we're playing in the best conference in field hockey in the Big Ten. So, we have outstanding coaches, really talented athletes, and week in and week out, you're finding yourself strategizing and preparing for unbelievably competitive matches. So, I mean, just so far right now, we have 7 of our 9 teams in the Big Ten in the top 20 and 5 of them in the top 8. So it's a big challenge, and one that we love to be a part of year in and year out. And I think we all have our competitors that we've had kind of some crazy matches against. So there's almost too many to name, to be quite honest.
Yeah, no, you're right. You guys are butting heads in that division all the time right now. Yeah, for sure. Now, this whole series that we put together comes under the umbrella of women in coaching. You've been involved in the sport for many years as a player and as a coach. What advice do you have for women that are either in coaching or getting into coaching?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, we need more young women to know that coaching is a worthy profession, and that you can really make a great living doing it and staying in it. And I think it's just an opportunity to give back to sport, and an experience that's given so much, to them, and really to help empower the next generation. But as far as advice wise, I would say, trust yourself and stay true to what you believe in, and have the confidence to really forge your own path. And I do think, I've hit on this before, but it's really important to hire good people and surround yourself with people who complement your weaknesses, and be okay allowing them to shine, because I think that will only make you and your team stronger. And I think sometimes people have a hard time when they're the boss, maybe allowing others to shine. So also I'd really encourage, women to have periodic, like, courageous moments where they get a bit uncomfortable and challenge themselves to learn something new. Networking, I think, is so important. Find coaches in the profession that have more experience than you do, and don't be shy. Converse with them, learn from them. Find people who you can really trust and rely on. And lastly, I think it's really important as women, for sure, to take ownership and to continue to fight for equal opportunities for their athletes and themselves. It's been 50 years since Title IX has passed, and we've certainly made progress, but we still have a lot of work to do in terms of equity.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's interesting. I think I just listening to your comment there. I think that's a really important point for anybody getting into coaching, to be honest, whether they're, wherever they're joining the sport environment. But you spoke there about putting people in that complement you and maybe cover for some of your weaknesses. I think the most important thing is to, before trying to lead other people, is to know yourself first. And I think that's an important step in the journey to go on, is to really look in the mirror and understand where you do things well, but also where there's some gaps, and
Definitely.
either develop those or plug people in around those, for sure. So I think that's a great message. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Now,
sure.
we're getting towards the end here.
Yeah.
And the last question, as we know, is going to be your favorite exercise or favorite drill. And we'll bring it up on screen here in a moment. Okay. And we'd love you just to talk us through what we're looking at here and why it is that you've chosen this particular exercise as the one that sort of stands out to you for being something that you really like and enjoy.
Yeah, sure. So this is called the Louisville game. And it's called that because the first time we ever played it was at a practice we had in Louisville before we were set to play in a Final Four game there, and the team loved it, so we called it the Louisville game as a reference. The reason I love it, Craig, is it has everything in it, from transition to goal scoring to defensive org. There's a bit of chaos at times. The goalkeepers are heavily involved. There's score and time. And when we bring this drill out or exercise out in practice, the team gets so unbelievably intense and competitive. So I always love that. But really what you're looking at, the details of the exercise, you can really manipulate the numbers however you see fit. We typically play it, as you see here, at 8v8, but only 4 players that are in the playing area at one time. And I'm a big stats and facts person. So however how I get the team to whoever has possession first is basically by giving them like, a trivia question, usually about Iowa field hockey history, and whoever gets it right gets possession of the ball to start. But whichever, as I said, whoever gets the ball first is on attack. The attacking team is going to goal, and they're trying to score and stay on attack. So it's a make it take it situation. And the attacking team can use the players on the outside to either pivot the ball or to switch. And then obviously there's transition. If the defense wins it, they have to play it outside the playing area, and then they can re-attack. So lots of different things in this. Yes, it's a very simple game, but there's lots of key emphases that I think are pretty realistic. And there's lots of ways to really increase the challenge, and make it exciting and change it slightly.
Yeah, no, like you say, I think what I like about this is it's sort of reflective of a particular part of the field. So you've got game-like activity going on at a time, and the distances, the decisions, the activity, the geography of it is all going to be relative, and that's always helpful. And as you say, the different amounts of chaos, and which lead to those moments of okay, deciding what to do. What do I see? How do I now act and react to it? So yeah, really cool. I like it. How often might you do this, or a version of this? What does this look like? Is this a daily or weekly or fortnightly? What does it look like?
Yeah, excuse me. It's not. I mean, we don't do it daily, but especially if we need to get them going at a certain moment, we'll sometimes do this. Before we play a game, or when we're on the road, at an opponent's at a site. A lot of times, just if we're really looking like we have to increase some scoring opportunities, or we've been struggling in that way, we'll talk through this, or just really even cleaning up our defensive third, we'll play it. So it varies for us. They know it. I know they play it a lot when they're training on their own, because they love the intensity that it brings out, and they reference it quite a bit, or it's fun when they'll ask for it. Can we play the Louisville game? It's been quite a while. Can we play that? So yeah, sometimes we grant their wishes, and other times we don't. But we also, a lot of the different exercises that we do use, they have different intensity levels to it. And so, they know this is one of those high intensity pieces. If we need to get a little heart rate spike too, or depending on, numbers and whatnot, we can make it be as such. But
yeah, very cool. Very good. Well, listen, we're at the end of our time here. I would just like to finish as I started, by thanking you again for being so generous with your time today, and joining us for this series. We know you're right in the middle of the thick of it now, so we really do appreciate you taking some time out of your day. Great to see you, and fantastic season so far. Good luck with the rest of it, and yeah, I hope it goes well for you.
Oh, I appreciate it. It was an honor to be here with you today, Craig. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and we'll definitely see you down the road for sure.
Yeah, travel well, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much, Lisa.
Thank you.